Louise, hey film, hey interview, take one.
Well, the simple part that most people don't understand is that every thought we think and every word we speak is creating our future. It's as though our thoughts go out into the universe and are accepted and brought back to us as experience. Now that is a very simple thing, but most people don't get it. They don't understand it. They've never heard it before and they think it's ridiculous. But if you can really accept the fact that every time you think a thought and every time you speak a word, you are literally painting your future, making your dinner, whatever you want to call it, you are creating. And you're creating your own life. And this is simple, but it's not easy to accept. But once you accept it, then you can start deliberately creating what you want in your life. And you begin to be aware of what you don't want in your life and how you are contributing to it. Now, I think this has been around forever, but for some reason in the last 20 years, the universe has wanted this to go out among all the people, or all the people that are ready for it. See, most of us just think, and we don't pay any attention to what we're thinking. We're just doing it. But that's something you need to train yourself to do, to begin to train yourself to be aware of what you're thinking. And one of the ways to do that is to periodically say to yourself, what am I thinking? Would I like this thought to create my life? Would I like to have the experience that this thought could bring to me? Now, it takes a while to do that, but even if we could begin on the smallest level to be aware of our thinking, we can start to make changes. To begin with, you start by doing what we call doing affirmations, and that is making positive statements about your life that are positive. And you do them deliberately. You might do them in the morning, you might do them at noon, you might do them at night, you might do them, twice a day or whatever. But you do this and you let this become a habit. And as you start to do them, things will begin to change, maybe on a very small level. I call it getting the green lights in the parking places. I mean, they're not huge things in your life, but it can be very nice when you get 3 green lights in a row and you're in a hurry. Doing an affirmation is either writing it down, writing it on the wall or the mirror, or using just saying it. What I like people to do is to stand in front of a mirror and do their affirmations. Because there's something very powerful about looking in your own eyes and accepting yourself, or noticing that you reject yourself when you're saying something positive about yourself. So that would be a very beginning way to start. Say in the morning, you get up in the morning, you go to the mirror, and this is a big one, and it's hard for lots of people. But you look in the mirror and say, I love you. I really, really love you. And to begin with, that can be so hard for people because they think of all the things that they think are wrong with them. But if you can start your day saying that, it's very powerful. Remember, I'd like to think the universe is listening to everything you say and everything you think and saying, okay, you can get that. So then it starts to bring you in and bring things into you. And I know this sounds far-fetched, but it's amazing how it works. If you do a good general positive statement for yourself, the universe will figure out how to manifest that, how to bring that about in your life. So things could happen that you wouldn't expect at all, but they will happen. If you think of doing your positive affirmations is like planting a seed in the ground. It's not necessarily true at the moment, but it is something you want to have be true. So you put the seed in, and you plant a seed and you expect it to grow. Or you maybe plant 3 seeds just in case. You expect them to grow. And you don't wait 2 days and then dig in the earth and say, what's happening, what's happening? You expect that thing to grow because you know there's a law and a process. And the seed will grow if it is in the right soil and it has the right amount of moisture. Making it really a habit and doing it every day. Doing something every morning when you wake up, that's a really good time. And another good time is when you go to sleep at night. And gratitude works a lot. Just being grateful for everything. The more, I always say the universe loves gratitude. The more you're grateful for what the good is in your life, the more good you get to be grateful about. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you know, if somebody gives you a present or gives me a present and I say, oh my God, I hate that color and it doesn't fit, and you know, that person will never give me another present. Mm-hmm. But if you say, oh, it's wonderful and thank you, I really adore it, it's great, that person is probably going to want to buy you a present every time they see something they think you would like. And it's like that with the universe. The universe loves gratitude. If you have very strong beliefs within you that you don't deserve good things in your life, and a lot of people have that, then there can be delays. And sometimes people say, well, affirmations don't work, I've done them. But when they're doing, for instance, prosperity affirmations, and they've done some prosperity affirmations, and they say it doesn't work, nothing's happening. And I say, well, all right, how many prosperity affirmations did you do in a day? And they'll say 3, probably. And they say, all right, how many poverty affirmations did you do this day? And that could be 300, depending on where you're coming from and what is running through your mind. See, I have this, one of my thoughts about life is that only good lies before me. And I've been saying this for many years. So it doesn't really matter to me what happens in life, because I know it's going to be good. Well, there are lots of things you can do to help you become more conscious of what is going on. And because so many of our belief systems really are unconscious or subconscious, we're not aware of them. They're just things that were bred into us as we were children, is to take a little time to figure out what they are. And I always say a really good exercise is to take a big sheet of paper and write on top of it, say, what I think about men. And then another one, what I think about women, what do I think about money, what do I think about any subject you can think of. And just write all the things that come out of your thoughts. And whether they sound good or not, just write them down. And any one subject, if you just write them all down and then look at them and see how many are positive and how many are negative. And if you can take those negative ones and turn them around, make them into positive affirmations, then you can start clearing up what you believe about, say, money that is not positive for you, and or is keeping you from bringing money in. And you can do that with lots of things in your life, so you can really begin to realize what you do believe about these things. So you can't change your thoughts if you don't know what your thoughts are. There is a law of thinking, and we are beginning to learn about it. And it is like a computer. If you have this gorgeous computer put in front of you, and you don't know what to do with it, it's a piece of junk. But if you learn the language of the computer, miracles happen. And that is what the law of thinking is. When you learn how it works, miracles happen. What you think and what you believe, it's what will come true for you. Your thoughts create your life. It's that simple. And when we can get that, we can make enormous changes. Well, I think it really starts with realizing that you don't love yourself, that most people don't. Most people feel they're not good enough, that they haven't done it right, they won't do it right, they'll never be enough, and they're definitely not lovable. And when we come from that space, it's very hard to create things for ourselves that are really good. So in the early days when I worked with people, I used to fix this problem and fix that problem, and you'd have this a health thing, and we'd work on that, and we'd work on this. And one day I discovered, much to my amazement, that if I would help people learn to love themselves, to really accept themselves as they are, we didn't have to work around problems, because it was almost like a miracle. Everything seemed to fall away. It's a hard one for people because we grow up believing that we're not good enough and nothing is right. I remember lots of times I would ask people, well, what is really wrong with you? What have you done that is so terrible that you're not acceptable to yourself? And I never, ever got an answer that made any sense. You know, they might say something like, well, I'm too fat. Well, so, you know, but when you talk about loving yourself, a lot of people think that that's vanity, but it isn't really. It has nothing to do with that. That is narcissistic. But to really care for you and to acknowledge that you are an important being. It's almost like in the Bible they would say, you recognize that you are a child of God, that therefore you are perfect. But even if you're not a biblical person, if you can recognize that you are a being that has self-worth, if you can really recognize your own worth, then you start to treat yourself differently. And I think that's what's so very important about loving yourself, is you stop beating yourself up, you stop making yourself wrong, you stop talking about how awful you are, and you stop saying things like, I'm really stupid and stuff, and you start to treat yourself with a certain amount of respect. And this makes an enormous difference, because what you give out in life is what comes back to you. So if you're giving out a feeling of, I'm okay, I'm good enough as I am, and I am acceptable, and I love life, and I love me, and you start having gratitude for yourself and for life, then life treats you differently, because you are having a different vibration that you're giving out and getting back. And that's when things really start to flow. Now, a lot of people don't realize it, but you have to practice. You just have to start it. And that's why I try to get people to do a lot of mirror work. If you look in the mirror, just simple things like looking in the mirror in your own eyes and saying, I love you. I really, really love you. And it helps if you use your name, Louise, I love you. I really love you. It gets to that little child inside that has been rejected for so long, and it breaks open sort of a dam or a door or whatever you want to call it, and it's like little miracles start to happen. Lots of little good things happen, and the universe loves grateful people. The more grateful you are, the more you get to be grateful about. It's that simple. Life is really very simple. We make it enormously complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Everybody's on a journey from the time we're born till the time we leave. But when we go on a spiritual journey, it seems to be more conscious, and we begin to make conscious choices about life instead of just going on and getting up in the morning and doing our stuff and then going to bed. We begin to make conscious choices of our thoughts and our actions and even the foods we eat and things like that. And it's putting your foot on the pathway one step at a time. And some of us do very devious journeys, and we take lots of little side tracks, and we don't get very far really. And some of us just are very conscientious about it and go one step after another and go closer to our pathway, which is really, to me, I think enlightenment is letting go of all the things we believe that are not benefiting us in life, or that are barriers to our life, to the good things in life, and to release them one by one and just think, I don't have to believe that anymore, or do I want to believe that anymore? And making a conscious choice. When we can understand that every single thing we believe has been a choice, and it may or may not be true. It can be true for you and not for you, because it's your belief system and your belief system, and then I have my belief system. I say a lot, that may be true for you, it's not true for me. I may not say that out loud, But people are doing things or saying things, and I think that to myself a lot. And also, it has nothing to do with me. Whatever's going, that has nothing to do with me, because I'm under the law of my own consciousness. This is my pathway, and you have your pathway, you have yours, everybody does. So we're all on a journey, and I think the more conscientious we are about it, and the more conscious choices we make, the better our journey is, or the easier, or the swifter, or we get more goodies, or we have better health. All that stuff. When I was beginning to work with people in the early days, I paid very close attention to what people said. And it became a habit with me, and I still do. I listen to what people say more than, you know, the words they're using and everything. And so often I think, oh, if you just wouldn't use those words. If you just take those 3 words out of your vocabulary, because people use negative words a lot, the same ones over and over again. Yes, I hear words, much more than other people.
What words would you take out of the vocabulary?
Well, should to begin with. That's a big one. Because every time you say should, you're making yourself wrong. Either you were wrong, or you are wrong, or you're going to be wrong. So take that one out completely. And just a lot of negative expressions that people use. I'm not good enough, or this will never work, or oh, it's a rotten day, or, you know, there's just tons of expressions, and we use them over and over again, and they don't do us any good at all. Everybody's journey is individual, because we start from different places, so we can't all be having the same journey. But I think we all get certain ahas, and that's when we've sort of learned something. We say, oh, okay, and then if we can keep that, what we've learned, and practice it, then we've made another step and we can move forward. Yes, it's a lifetime journey, and we never stop learning. I'm 80 and I'm still learning. Though the lessons are easier now than they used to be. I like to think of it when we start, we have all these boulders in front of us on our pathway, and we start to get the boulders out of the way, and you finally get to the point where it's gravel. And gravel you can handle, you know. And you can sweep gravel, and you can do things. So, and then occasionally there's an old boulder.
Rolls back into your path.
You think, oh, I thought I had that one, but not completely. And you know, also I think that when we learn lessons, we think, oh, I've learned that one, it'll never happen again, I've done that, and that's it. Well, how do you know you've done it unless it comes by once more, and see how you react? Have you really learned it? Is it really nothing for you? Have you gone beyond that? Or are you going to go right back into the same old reaction? See, we're never wrong. That's what we need to learn that. We're always doing the best we can with the understanding and awareness and knowledge we have at that moment. I have a very firm belief that only good lies before me. And with that belief, it doesn't matter what comes, because it'll be only good. And I want it to be new and different and exciting and stuff. No, I'm in my 80s now, and new things are happening. So let it roll.
Louise Hay film, Dyer interview, take 1.
It seems to me that I have always known this. And that I came into this world knowing that you become what you think about, whether you want it or not. I was really very blessed. I lived in an orphanage until I was 10, in a series of foster homes with my older brother, but he was sick quite a bit. He was very anemic, and I used to have to help him as a young boy. He was 16 months older than I was, and this was when I was 4, 5, 6, and 7, and so on. And I can remember, I lived out in Mount Clemens, Michigan, at 231 Town Hall Road with a lady. Her name was Mrs. Scarf, and she had a lot of children would come and go from there. And I was in a foster home because the circumstances at that time were such that my father had walked out on his family, and I was born in the Depression, and there was no welfare and things like that in those days. So it was like people just helped each other out. And my mother was working as a candy girl in Detroit, on the east side of Detroit, earning $17 a week, and she just didn't have the money and wasn't able to provide for her children. So we lived out at this one particular place, and I can remember whenever a new child would come to the house, they would always say, "Go find Wayne." And I would be out in the back. They had orchards there, and this was no hardship. This was no difficult thing for me. This was a great blessing, I think, in my life. Those earliest days. And I can remember a girl named Martha came, and they were dropping her off for basically the same reasons that we were dropped off there. And they said, "Go find Wayne." And I came and I started talking to Martha, and she was crying, and she was all upset, and she was sad, and I was trying to convince her that she didn't have to be sad, that this was, and I remember saying to her, "This is a great place, there's no parents here. You can do pretty much anything that you want. I mean, you've got a lot of freedom, and we're going to have a great time." And I can remember being in school, at the public school. It was a numbered school. They didn't even name them in that day. It was PS number 127, and I remember the teachers, one time we were out on the playground and all the kids were all upset, and I said, "What's wrong?" And they said, "Well, the teacher said this is the worst class that she ever had," and she was so all upset, and she was angry, and she was hurt, and I said, "Well, why would you allow her opinions to have anything to, if this is her hardest day, then her life is just easy," and I can remember talking to other people about, all you have to do is change the way you think. And it goes from being a miserable experience or a tough experience or a hard experience to one that you can do anything that you want with. And when my mother got our family all back together again when I was nine, almost 10 years old. And I can remember her telling me what it was like when I was just a baby, when I was just like an infant, that I was the one child that could make everybody else laugh. At times when everybody else would. She said we were waiting for a bus one time when we were just real babies before I went into the orphanage, and she said a car came by, and it was in Detroit, and there was all this slush, and and we all went flying down. Everybody had dirt on them and dirty snow, and we were laying in the ground, and everybody was crying. And she said, "You were and upset and mad because our clothes were wet and so on." And she said, "You just stood up and said, this is great, isn't this wonderful? Look, we don't have to do this, and we don't, just turning it into something positive." It's like, so the ability to be able to do that was something, I can't remember a time in my life when I didn't know that if I really went to work on how I thought, that things just didn't have to be bad. I was the richest kid in the orphanage. I've talked about that many times in my lectures, that a snowstorm was a time we had two snow shovels at the home, and one of them had the edges all curled up from hitting the curbs, and you couldn't make any money with that one. So the other one, when it would snow, I would go downstairs and I would take the good snow shovel and I would put it under my bed, and I'd sleep with it right with me in the bed so that nobody else would get it. And I would get up before everybody else got up, and I would go out and I would just shovel everybody else's snow, shovel their walk. And then later on, and I'd just go knock on the door and just tell them that I shoveled their walk. And some would say thank you, and some would give me a dime, which doesn't sound like much, but that's about $3,000 in today's money. And when I found out that soda pop bottles, for example, were worth 2 cents each, that if you took them back, you could get 2 cents back, that was just like one of the great awarenesses and awakenings of my life, because I would follow people around who were drinking a Coca-Cola and say, "You almost done with that?" They said, "Well, no, I'm not going to." "Well, just whenever you're ready." I just follow them, and then we'll walk until, and we had a coal bin where we lived, because it was coal furnaces, and we filled that coal bin with soda pop bottles, and I would take it back. It was just always easy to change, and all the other kids would be not having any money and complaining about not being able to have abundance or be able to have some level of being able to buy themselves like just a little donut or a Pepsi Cola or something. They couldn't figure it out, and it always seemed so easy to me that all you had to do was just look around and see the opportunities in anything, and it had nothing to do with whether there are opportunities there. There always are opportunities. You know, I'm 67 years old. I have never, ever been unemployed or even can't even deal with the concept of unemployment. It isn't that I've had no job. I've always had more jobs than and it isn't because I've been through all good economic times. There've been some pretty sour economic times over the last 50 years or so. I just have never known how to think any other way than, if you change the way you think about things, you can create whatever it is you want for yourself in your life. It's just a simple knowing. I mean, I've made a living talking about it. I've written lots of books about it and so on, but I have always lived it and practiced it, and I still do today. It was Thomas Troward. I don't know. He did some lectures on mental science way back in the 1907, 1908. He was from Scotland. And one of the things that he said is that the law of flotation was not discovered by the contemplation of the sinking of things. So that, you know, like before the 15th and 16th centuries, all of the ships were made out of wood. Not because iron wasn't available and steel wasn't available, but because there was a belief that wood floated. So therefore you had to make ships out of things that floated. That's literally how and then someone came along and said that it has absolutely nothing to do with what things are made out of. It has to do with the amount of water that is being dispersed. That's what determines whether something will float or not. And I think about that all the time because it's in the contemplation of what you desire that you create what it is that you want to have for yourself. It's in your willingness to contemplate it. And nothing more, according to Troward and mental science. So that I think about the Wright brothers, you know, 100 or so years ago. You know, it's like, and I said the law of flying was not discovered by the contemplation of the staying on the ground of things. So that these were two people, like for me, to figure out how to get an airplane to fly, and my limited knowledge of all of that, I would probably have contemplated the staying on the ground of things. You know, it's like, this is what happened. But there's somebody came along and contemplated the idea that if you get enough speed going and you have the right design and you get pressure underneath something like this and you get that this thing is going to lift off the other. Somebody had to contemplate that idea. And everybody who contemplated that it wasn't possible, that it couldn't work, was a part of why flying didn't take place, because there was no new law discovered in the early part of the 20th century, any more than electricity was discovered by, you know, Thomas Edison or anyone like that. I mean, the ability to have electricity has always been there. Somebody has to contemplate. So it's like in your own personal life, your willingness to contemplate yourself as a person who is capable of attracting into your life what you want, having the kind of relationships that you want, being able to have abundance where you know, scarcity always exists. All you have to do is begin the process by being willing to contemplate the presence of that in your life. And I've always been a person that I can remember throughout my life as someone who could contemplate myself being able to do things that most people couldn't. And I can give you a good example. When my mother got us all back together and we were living in Detroit, on the east side of Detroit, and we got a new television set. It was a black and white, it was a screen about this big, it was an Admiral, and we had it in our home, and it was like, oh my God, black and white television, you know, you remember Uncle Milty and all and so on. And there was a guy that was on TV, his name was Steve Allen, and he was on The Tonight Show. And I was 11, 12, 13 years old. I was born in 1940, so I was 51 or 52, and I used to stay up every night and watch The Tonight Show. Even though I had to go to school the next day, there was just something about that show, and you know, all of the characters and smock and all the things that Steve Allen would do on it. And I would come down when I would be talking the next day, and I would be telling my mother and my two brothers that when I do The Tonight Show, this is what I would say. I wouldn't have said what Louis and I say, the way reacted, how he reacted to that. I would have said this, and I used to do this, and my brothers and my mother would say, "That's just Wayne. He's just nutty. He thinks he's on the Tonight Show. He thinks he's going to do the Tonight Show." And I would go up into my room at you know, on this little tiny house that we lived in, you know, a little 2-bedroom house that 5 of us lived in because my mother remarried, and I would see myself doing the Tonight Show. I would just practice it, and Steve Allen became someone that I was really enamored of. Well, you know, fast forward, I don't know, 30 years or whatever, and it's, and I've written a book, Your Erroneous Zones, and the Tonight Show calls, and they ask me if I would like to come on and do it. So I do my first stint on the Tonight Show. I did the show like 37 times over a period of 3 or 4 years with all these different hosts, but Johnny Carson was on, and the first guest on the very first show when I did the show was Steve Allen, and it was like something clicked in me that I had contemplated that as a child. I had always had a knowing, and I can remember sitting there talking to Johnny about this thing that, you know, and Steve Allen was sitting there right next to me, and we were talking about that kind of thing. So that by putting my attention on something, it wasn't some deliberate thing that I was doing, you know, when I was 11 or 12 years old that was designating that I was going to be a person who was going to be appearing on talk shows 30 years from now. It was just an awareness to, a willingness to contemplate myself in that kind of a place. And I think the power of contemplation is the thing that most people haven't harnessed yet. And when we do, when you harness it in your life, there's absolutely no limit to what you can attract into your life. If you absolutely stay focused on what it is that you know you're going to manifest and attract, you're not going to do it in your time. You know, Jackson Browne sings a song that says, "And creation reveals its secrets by and by." I mean, you can't push the river. You can't, it's all done in divine time, but it will show. It will show. It will manifest. It will attract itself. And I'm never surprised any longer about anything that I put my thoughts on, that I can attract it into my life. I just absolutely know that law of attraction, and that it absolutely works. And I have absolutely no doubt about it. And I feel as if, like, before I even came into this world, when I was in the world of spirit, that I had a conversation with God. And it was God saying to me, like, what would you like to do in this lifetime? And I said, well, I'd really like to spend a lifetime teaching self-reliance, because that's truly all I've ever done since the time I was just a little boy, through all my life. I mean, I could just go through all of the things that I've done. It's been always about teaching self-reliance. And God said, it's like, you're sure you want to spend a whole lifetime teaching self-reliance? I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. And he said, well, we better get your little ass into an orphanage then. You know? Rumi said, this ancient Persian poet, brilliant, beautiful poet, he said, sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment. It feels like bewilderment. It feels like awe. It feels like, even as I think about it now, I can feel myself tearing up behind my eyes, because only I know what is going on behind my eyeballs. It feels like so glorious and so sweet and so trusting, so knowing. You know, there's just this powerful knowing that you're not alone. There's this. You know, that it's like there's a safety, there's a sense of that you're not alone. I had this great experience years ago. There's a friend of mine, he's on KTAR, a radio station in Phoenix. His name's Pat McMahon, Irish Catholic guy. And Mother Teresa is to be his guest, all right, on the same day that I'm his guest. So we're in the studio, you know, and Mother Teresa comes in. Now, she's about 4'10", maybe weighs 80 pounds. And she's there to talk about a homeless shelter that she slept in the night before, to tell the people of Phoenix about this homeless shelter. And I'm there to talk about a book that I don't know which one it was. It was 10, 15 years ago. So Pat tells Mother Teresa, is there anything that I can do for you? And you can imagine the bewilderment and the awe that this is an Irish Catholic guy from, you know, living in Phoenix, and Mother Teresa, a saint, is coming there, and you know, he's just bewildered. He's beyond bewildered. He just doesn't know what to do with himself. He's just so honored, and he says, "Is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything I can do?" And she said, "No." She said, I just came here to talk about the homeless shelter. He said, but Mother Teresa, he said, we have a 50,000 watt clear channel station that goes in every direction. And it was like he's got his ego involved. Like we can help you to raise a lot of money for your work and your mission in Calcutta. And she said, no, No, I'm not interested in raising money or your radio station getting a... She said, I just want to talk about the homeless shelter, that's all. And he's exasperated. And finally, and he's down on his knees. Really. And finally she says, stand up. She said, you seem so serious. She said, there is one thing that you can do. And he just stood up and he said, well, what is it? I'd do anything. She said, well, tomorrow morning, she said, get up at 4 a.m. And she said, and go out onto the streets of Phoenix and find someone who's living there, who believes that he's alone, and convince him that he's not. That's what you can do. And behind the feeling we're talking about here is this feeling of aloneness for so many people who are lost in the world, that I don't have like a connection to something greater than myself. I've come to believe that who I am is what I do, and what I have, and what other people think about me, and who I am is separate from everybody else, and who I am is separate even from what I'd like to attract into my life, that I'm separate from all the things that are missing, and I'm separate even from God, and that there's a place within me that knows that I'm not separate from any of that, that if there's no place that God is not, or that source is not, or the energy that provides, that is always giving and always creating is not, if there's no place that it is not, then it has to be in me. I know that. And if there's no place that is not, and it has to be in me, it has to be also in everything that is missing in my life, or that I think is missing. It's there too. So that in some mysterious, invisible way, I'm already connected to everything that's missing in my life through something called spirit. And when I recognized that I'm not here as this human being having a spiritual experience, when you recognize that your essence is that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, not the other way around, when you really get that, I mean, not that you can say it and it's clever, but when you know that who you are is this essence, you don't see, there's no other, there's no them. There's nothing outside of you. You're connected to everyone and everything. As the Native Americans, you'd say that no tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. Living the Tao Te Ching, this 2,600-year-old, some people call it the greatest, the wisest book ever written. It speaks so much about relationships. Tao, the word Tao means the great way. It's really just another synonym for God, or source, or spirit, or that which is the all-creating. And one of the things that it says that was really helpful to me, probably the most helpful thing in it, was that whenever you have a conflict of any kind, in any relationship, whenever you have a conflict, that the person who is willing to be of Tao, of God, of source, is the one who will practice forgiveness, or will go to the person that they have a conflict with and bring love to it, instead of the freeze out, instead of the anger, instead of the hatred, instead of the revenge, instead of so many of the things that we do when we have conflicts in our lives. We just don't talk to that person. Like, I'm not talking to that. I'm not talking to him. He's going to call me because I called the last time. And that's but the person who lives the Tao life, the life of a higher consciousness, is the person who says, I end all conflicts on love, which is where we all come from. We come from a source that is love. So for me, that has been just so useful. I have 8 children, and that's been just extraordinarily helpful for me to be in a relationship where I can always be of love, where I can just, and so then you don't even, conflicts become something that are no longer present, because conflict requires two-ness. In order to have a conflict, you have to have two different opinions or whatever. But if you live in oneness, if you really see yourself in everyone else, see yourself in all the things, including the plants, including the animals, and including all beings and so on. If you just suspend this ego part of you and just see yourself in that other person, then your arguments are really with yourself. and your hatreds are really about yourself, and you begin to really see that I don't have to project anything onto anyone else that isn't what I choose to be. You do U-turns in your life. I've done U-turns in my life, and it's having the curiosity, it's having the willingness to say, this isn't working for me. You know, it's like you get bit by a snake, and you're bit, okay? So, but the bite doesn't kill you. You're still there, you know. You don't die from a snake bite. You don't die from you don't get hurt from what somebody else does to you. It's the venom that continues to pour through your system after the bite. That's what causes difficulties in relationships and so on. And when you recognize that to be angry, to be full of revenge, I mean, I could bring anybody in this crew in here and do a muscle test with them and ask them a question to hold your arm out to hold your arm out like this, and think about somebody who's abandoned you or abused you, who did something that you didn't like, who borrowed money from you and didn't pay it back, who walked out on you, someone that you hate, and just for a moment, hold your arm out as hard as you can. I'm going to put 2 fingers right here, and I'm going to push down, and you think about getting revenge. You just think about, even if you don't want to do that, just think the thought of, I'm going to get even with that bastard for what he did or what she did. I'm going to really get even with him, and you push, and that you find out that they have no strength when you think a thought of revenge. There's no strength in that. Kinesiology, say, very simple test. Then if I say to yourself, okay.
I have somebody that.
Okay, sit down. All right, here, come over this way. Okay, just put your arm out.
Here?
No, over here.
Over here?
Yeah, just hold this. Okay. Okay. Now, I'd like you to think of, first of all, tell me your name.
Michael.
Michael what?
Gorgian.
Is that the truth?
Yeah.
Tell me you're telling the truth.
I'm telling you the truth.
My name is?
Michael Gorgian.
And that is the truth? Okay, resist me as hard as you can, okay? And I'm going to just push down, okay? So that's the truth. Now, for just 1 second, just make up a name. But tell me that it's the truth. I want you to lie to me. What is your name?
My name is Ron Garcia.
My name is Ron Garcia. Is that the truth?
Yes, that's the
truth. You're telling me the truth?
That's the truth.
Say it again. My name is?
My name is Ron Garcia.
And that is?
The truth.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought. You see the shift? Can you see a change in you? Mm-hmm. Can you see a slight change in you?
Yeah,
okay, you're strong. Okay. Yeah. Now I'd like you, I'm just doing that for a little bit. Yeah. Okay, now I'd like you to think about someone. I'd like you to move over this way. There we go. I'd like you to think about someone in your life that abused you, abandoned you, that did something to, without any details, I don't want to know any of the details, and you are hurt by it, and you are angry about it. And forget about whether you've forgiven them or not. I want you to just think about getting even with them. I want you to think about revenge, okay? I'm going to get even with that person, no matter what, okay? And put your arm out, and can you hold on to that thought of revenge, okay? I'm going to get even with that person for what they did. I'm angry at them. And hold on to that thought and just think, resist me as hard as you can. And notice what's happening with your arm. Resist, again, one more time. Think that thought. I'm really going to get angry. I'm really pissed. I'm really hurt. I'm going to get you back for that, okay? And resist me as hard as you can. Now notice what's happening here. You have almost no strength. I'm not even pushing down. Now I want you to just change the thought.
Okay.
I want you to change the thought right now. And I want you to change it to one of love and forgiveness. I just want you to surround them with the light of God. I want you to surround them with the most beautiful love that you can think of. And just think of that thought. They did what they knew how to do, given the conditions of their life. I can't ask any more of anybody than that. Put your arm out. Put your arm out. Resist me as hard as you can, and forgive them in your heart. And forgive them in your heart. Now get even, get angry, I'm going to get really even with them, and watch what happens. Can you see the change? You see the change? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. That's how it works. You see? Every thought you have of shame, every thought you have of anger, every thought you have of revenge is a thought that weakens you. Every muscle in your body. It's even in your eyes.
Well, I think, yeah, even I've, like I couldn't look at you when my attention
I could see the shift. Your heart is a muscle, isn't it? How many times do we say to our children, you should be ashamed of yourself? Think of, here, watch, put your arm up. Resist me as hard as you can. Think of a moment in your life when you felt great love. The greatest love you ever felt in your life. Just think of that moment. And I don't want to know anything about it, just think about who it was, okay? Can you think of a moment like that? Mm-hmm. Great love. Michael is just loved, okay? And look, I can't nudge you, right? I'm pushing really hard. Mm-hmm. Now think of a moment when you felt shame. You just did something and you're just ashamed of it, whatever it was, okay? You think of something like that? Okay, resist me as hard as you can. You're thinking shame, and just watch what happens to your arm. Look, no matter how hard you try, you have no strength, do you? You have no strength, okay? Now think love. Think love. Just think of that moment and shift. You see the change? Now think shame.
I'm trying hard. Yeah.
Think shame. Just think of shame. You're ashamed. You're really ashamed. Whatever you did, you're really ashamed. You really screwed up, okay? Resist me a second. Look, you have no strength. Look, you can't think. You know where I learned it? I learned it from my dentist.
What?
My dentist. I had crowns put into my teeth, and he would get me out of the chair. I said, "Who's this crazy man?" You know, he'd get me out of the chair. He was adjusting the occlusion. He'd say, bite down, and then he'd go, and if I'd go weak, he'd say, "It's not right yet." And he'd put me back in the chair. Beep, 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 beep. He'd adjust it a little more, and he said, "Now it's perfect," and it always was. It always was. Wow. This is the power.
Who's your dentist?
It's like what we just demonstrated here is the power of the thoughts that we have. What a thought of shame, a thought of anger, a thought of revenge, what it does to the muscles of our body. The muscles of our, it's like, the reason I ask you to tell me a lie, you know, is because I wanted to test your body, because your body wasn't made by your parents. We like to think that our bodies were made by our parents. That's because you look a certain way and all of that. But if we take the tiny little drop of protoplasm that created you, and we try to find out its origin, and we take it all the way back to subatomic particles and reduce it, we find out when we put it in a particle accelerator and rev it up at 250,000 miles an hour and collide it, and we open it up, there's nothing there. That you came from the invisible, you came from source. It's the spirit that gives life. So that once you understand that this body of yours is a creation not of human beings, but it's a creation of God. It's a creation of source. It's a creation. It came from nowhere, and an invisible source, and manifested into the world of the physical. And so it only reacts to truth, because it was created by truth. So once you lie, this is an ultimate lie detector test. That's why I always say we could have saved $93 million with President Clinton. You know, it's like, come on. Did you have sex or didn't you? Let's get over this, you know. But now you're using an instrument not of human beings. All of our bodies are divine creations, and they only react to truth with strength. The truth that when you go weak, you're going against your Tao nature. Your true nature is not revenge. Your true nature is not hatred. You came from love, and you have to stay in that state. And once you learn that, once you get that, like having that demonstrated could change your life. Just that moment could change forever. People ask me, what is your biggest confusion about humanity? It's like man's inhumanity to man. This recognition that we are something beyond ego. You know, and we don't, we have a divided world, a world that believes that, you know, if you're male, you're different than if you're female. If you're Muslim, you're different than if you're Christian. If you're born on one side of the river, then you're different than the person who wasn't. And we've taken on all of these ego beliefs. And my real strong thing about it is that I think that my generation, when I was in my 20s and so on, we were the generation that had to end a war. You know, we had to end a war. I took my doctoral orals on the 4th of May, 1970. The announcement came on the radio, on the television, you know, at around 4 in the afternoon, that the government had put live bullets into their rifles, and they fired on students who were protesting the war at Kent State, and 4 of them were killed. You can imagine what I felt, because I was really working very hard to try to end that war. When I had to go in and defend my dissertation, which seemed so trivial, when I considered what our government was now doing. We were going to put and all these students were doing was protesting a horrific war where people were dying in huge numbers. I think the new generation, this generation, it's their job isn't to end a war. It's to end war. It's to end the concept of war. And the concept of war comes out of this ego identification of who we are, and a belief that I am what I have, and I am what I do, and I am what others think of me, and I am separate from everyone, separate from God, separate from what's missing. This idea of separation and so on. And we will inch by inch move towards a place where people will begin to recognize their connection to each other rather than their separation, or we'll have to just start all over. We'll have to start it over. As Einstein said, if the next war that is fought, he said, after this one will be fought with, with sticks again. We'll have to start all over again. We'll have to start all over. And it's really about slaying this ego, this massive ego thing. You can see it in our foreign policy. You can see it in the way that we treat it. You can see it on television. You can see it in all of the ads that you see for having to take pills for everything. And that's what I feel my work is about. What my life is about now is ending the concept of hatred and separation.